Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. My apologies for our sound this week. I'm out of the studio on the road recording the show, so that's why it sounds a bit different. We'll be back in the home studio in Allen Park next week, though. On another note, we record our interviews on Skype, and as some of you might know that use Skype, Microsoft is transitioning over to the cloud, and as you might expect, they are experiencing some issues while that's happening. So hopefully they'll get that fixed soon, and our quality will return to what it used to be. At least I hope that's coming up soon. Technical issues aside, let's talk some Michigan football. We are headed to the Orange Bowl to meet Florida State on December 30th. I know we're disappointed it's not the playoffs, but it's time to move on and get ready for what will be a very good football team. In the coming weeks, we'll have our bowl preview shows, but this week we'll take a few minutes to talk about how the season ended and what a year it has been for the Big Ten. My guest today is Matt Wenzel from MLive. Matt joined Nick Baumgardner and Brendan Quinn at MLive this year, covering Michigan football, and we haven't had him on the show yet, so I thought this week would be a good time. Next week, when we're back in the home studio, we hope to get Steve Lorenz on from 24/7 Sports for a recruiting update, and of course his thoughts on the bowl game and much more. We held out hope until Saturday night that we might some way find a way into the playoffs. It was disappointing, but by Sunday we had to realize this. It was all under our control and we didn't get it done. Our playoff fate was left in the hands of others, which is never a good thing. Matt Wenzel from MLive joins us next to discuss that and more here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. With us on our game day segment this week is a gentleman who's a part of the MLive team that we follow all year covering Michigan football, works with Nick Baumgardner and, of course, Brendan Quinn. But it's his first time to join us, and what we hope is many times, Matt Wenzel. Great to have you with us, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's been a crazy year, as we all know. It ended yesterday. We're recording on Monday morning, so the CFP committee and the selections are all done with. Matt, you wrote a piece in MLive this morning. There were comments from Ryan Glasgow and Jake Butt. And, you know, I think most Michigan fans know what they said is true. If Michigan would have taken care of business against Ohio State, maybe even Iowa, they wouldn't have had to sweat out these last 2 weeks, would they?
No, and to their credit, they weren't blaming anybody else, or they were making the argument they feel like they're one of the best sports teams in the country, but it wasn't we should be in, not them type of argument. They know, and rightfully so, that it's their own fault that they're not in the playoffs. I mean, they had every opportunity to do so, and you can just look at the loss at Iowa and the loss at Ohio State. They had a 10-point lead in both of those ball games, chance to close each out, and they just were unable to do it. And that's on them. And I think that you could say that they don't belong in the playoff if they couldn't close out either of those games on the road with leads in both games and the opportunity to do so. And that's their own fault. But yeah, that's basically what they said yesterday as far as the playoff was concerned. They were hopeful that somehow they'd get in, but they knew that they were likely not going to get in, especially after Washington and Clemson won over the weekend.
I think we all knew it was a long shot, and it's all hindsight now, but it's clear just from listening in the last week to Kirby Hocutt and the CFP committee that they liked Michigan's resume despite what had happened with the two losses. And you have to wonder, and again, hindsight, if Michigan was going to get into the playoffs, do you think over the weekend that both Clemson and Washington needed to lose, or just one of them?
Well, I mean, like you said, the playoff committee liked Michigan. There's plenty of reason to like Michigan. They do have a very good team. And there's also the money factor, which is what this is all about. And Michigan, people watch Michigan. They'll tune in to watch them. They'll watch Harbaugh and all that. So they're a bigger draw than some other teams, like I would say Washington or maybe Clemson. But I mean, if you look, Michigan finished 6th. They finished behind Penn State in the rankings. So I guess if you're asking, based on that it would tell you that both Washington and Clemson would have had to lose for Michigan to have a chance to bump up. Although, I don't know. I think if it really came down to it, if Washington had lost and Clemson had won, I don't know if they'll put Penn State in over Michigan, even though Penn State closed the season strong. I mean, Michigan beat them 49-10 in a game that they called non-competitive, and it was. I mean, it was over pretty much from the start. So I don't know if they would have. I mean, nobody knows but the people that were in that room.
Exactly. Well, Jim Harbaugh met with the press over the weekend to talk about the Orange Bowl, which was the first time since the Ohio State game that he's met with the media, I think. And it doesn't sound like he's softened his view on what he thought of the officiating in that Ohio State game yet, does it?
No, he missed there was an Orange Bowl teleconference call at 4:40 yesterday, and Jimbo Fisher was on it. Jim Harbaugh was not. They could not locate him. It turns out he was on a flight. He said that's the reason he missed the call. So shortly after, we had player availability at 5:30, and I think we got done just after 6, and we were told that Jim had been located, and they put the line back up for just him to be on the call. And anyways, long story short, he was asked about the officiating and basically said that he believes he has the ability to speak his mind, speak what he sees the truth. He disagrees. He sees it a different way than what the Big Ten saw it, and would leave it at that. And he basically wouldn't say anything else other than that. He wouldn't comment about whether he talked to Jim Delaney or if that would change how he goes about things like this in the future, if he would be that critical or that open, speaking his mind or what he thought about the officiating. He pretty much just said he disagrees with what with their decision and with the officiating, and that's it. So you probably will never get anything else out of him on that.
I don't think so. And I think we all agree it's time to move on now. The selections are done with. It's on to the Orange Bowl. And it might take fans a while to warm up, so to speak, to this game. But now we look at Florida State. This is a good young team, isn't it, Matt?
I think it's a solid matchup. I mean, I would pick Michigan to win, but I wouldn't, I think it still should be a decent game.
The first that I've seen from Vegas is Michigan by 7.5, but who knows? We've got weeks, and who pays attention to that? I don't too much anymore. When you look at the end of the season now, it's been disappointing, and we've got a couple of weeks to get ready for the Orange Bowl. I know it had to be crushing for the Michigan players to go through this in the last 2 weeks, again, knowing that they could have controlled their own destiny. But looking ahead to an Orange Bowl, which to me is a pretty good consolation prize, it's hard to imagine a Jim Harbaugh team suffering a letdown with all of these seniors on this team and not being ready to play this game, Matt.
Yeah, we asked the guys about that yesterday. I think it's really different circumstances. Last year, you It was the rebound year after winning just 5 games the year before. There wasn't a letdown for not getting in the playoff because they were never really in the mix from the get-go. But that was a team that was returning almost everybody, and they had a motivation to finish the season strong after getting blown out by Ohio State, and they did. They handled Florida pretty easily, but now you have a whole bunch of seniors and a bunch of guys that are going to be in the NFL, and Jim Harbaugh, it's his Christmas camp, as he calls it, which is pretty much spring ball all over again. So, the challenge is for these seniors to buy into the next 3 weeks of practicing like madmen, and for the younger guys to do the same, knowing that these are, there's going to be spots for them next year. And all these guys yesterday said, they think that will happen. I think Chris Wormley said that, if there needed to be, a message delivered to the younger players that, not to have a letdown because you missed out in the playoffs, and they would do it. But, he said for himself and Deputy Jake Butt said the same, and Ryan Glasgow, that this is their last game playing for Michigan. It's all the motivation they need right there. It's a big bowl game. It's a New Year's Six game. They want to go out on top, and they won't have reached their goals no matter what they set out for this year. But, they were talking about being the 12th team in Michigan history to reach 11 wins. Doesn't happen often, and they wanted to be part of that. And, so their legacy isn't what they wanted, but they would still be progressing from 10 wins last year to 11 this year. And, they haven't played in the New Year's Six games since 2011, I think, the Sugar Bowl with Hoke. So, I think there's plenty of motivation for the upperclassmen to finish on a strong note, and for the the younger guys who will be taking over bigger roles next year. Use these 3 weeks as called it spring ball before spring ball.
Absolutely.
And Jim Harbaugh, if anybody's going to get these guys motivated, it would be him.
With us here on our game day segment this week, as we just take a look back at what happened over the weekend and look ahead to the Orange Bowl, is Matt Wenzel from MLive, who was joining us for the first time. Matt, of course, does a great job covering Michigan with Nick Baumgardner and Brendan Quinn. Matt, we have a couple of weeks to get ready for the Orange Bowl, and there'll be a lot of previews in between now and then. But let's shift gears for just a couple of minutes, if we could, to talk about the playoffs and just a few other things. The Big Ten has taken a beating over, really, the last few decades. It just seems like a long time now that we've been considered a mediocre football conference outside of the Big Ten Beltway. I know one season doesn't, bring you back, but what an impressive year for the Big Ten it's been, Matt.
Yeah, I think a mixture of the Big Ten having a good year and the SEC kind of, I wouldn't say being exposed, but Alabama is clearly the best team in the SEC, and it's not even close. So it seems like the gap between Alabama and the rest of the SEC is bigger now, and then Michigan was the Big Ten was Ohio State, Michigan, and then, I think those are the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, obviously, and then a slight gap, and then it's Wisconsin, Penn State, and there are some other teams. I think 10 Big Ten teams are in bowl bids this year. So it's been a good year for the Big Ten, but I think that all goes out the window if they don't have a showing in the playoffs. If Ohio State goes out there and loses to Clemson, well, then, it'll be another ho-hum year for the Big Ten. I think if Ohio State beats Clemson and they can give Alabama a run for its money in the championship game, then, or win, which I don't think will happen. I don't think anybody's beating Alabama, but I think they need a good showing in the playoffs for this really to be a true good year for the Big Ten. Penn State in the Rose Bowl, if they get embarrassed by USC, that takes the conference down a notch, and then Michigan and Florida State, and all these bowl games, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out, but I think what's going to make me grind my teeth, I think Michigan fans, is watching the playoffs, in particular the Ohio State-Clemson game. I've seen Clemson play quite a bit this year, watched tape on them, and they have played with fire all year long, and they did it again on Saturday night against Virginia Tech. I just think after watching them, and, who knows, I think Ohio State's going to be just a little bit too much for them. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd pick Ohio State to win. I'm continually impressed with the program that Urban Meyer's got there. They lost 17 or 18 starters, something ridiculous like that, like 10 guys to the NFL. So, they basically lost. They had a national championship team that was, disappointing last year and that it didn't get back to the playoff. Graduated almost everybody in note, minus JT Barrett and, a few other guys, and they're right back, and then they're back in the playoff. So, that's impressive. I think defensively they're skilled. Offensively, they got a number of weapons. I think Barrett needs to be he's not a very accurate thrower for, not deep balls, but even intermediate ones. But, if he can, make plays with his feet, they can get Curtis Samuel involved and Mike Weber, I think they'll win that game.
I think the best defense that Clemson has had to deal with. So that's going to be interesting how Ohio State game plans for Deshaun Watson. But, we'll see. And, looking ahead then, I've seen enough of Alabama to agree with you. I don't know that there's anyone that can stay in a game with them. They are just so loaded up from top to bottom, even though they have a freshman quarterback. But something just tells me that Ohio State is, if they get past Clemson, and I'm not saying that the SEC was really down this year. I just don't think Alabama has met up with a team that can do some of the things and has the athletic talent that Ohio State has. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've watched a little of Alabama here and there. Obviously busy, covering the Michigan, but I put on the SEC championship on Saturday, and Florida goes down, scores on their opening drive, and you're like, oh, this might be a game. And then by the end of the first quarter, it's over. I think Alabama has the ability to just dominate more defensively than offensively, but they've got playmakers. That being said, Ohio State, they've got guys that can make a game of it. But if you're asking me to bet on anybody to win the national championship, it's Alabama all the way.
Turning back to Michigan. Okay, we have 3 weeks before we tee it up against Florida State, and we all know the fans are disappointed and the players have to be, but we've all got to move forward. The Orange Bowl again, as Jim Harbaugh is saying, his Christmas camp, very important springboard for next season. It's 15 more practices, which is very important for a lot of the young players, a lot of coaching time. Very important in the plans that Jim Harbaugh has to take this program to the next level, isn't it?
Yeah, this was... we'd talked about this between me, Nick, and Quinn at times about whether the season would be a disappointment if they didn't win, reach the Big Ten championship game, go to the college football playoffs, and said, I think it's fair to say it would be because of all the talent, all these seniors they got. Well, all these guys are not all of them, but most of them are all, most of these starters are gone next year. So, this is the opportunity for these younger guys to get in there and get these 15 practices, get all these reps to be able to take over these positions next year. And I don't, so this was kind of the year, that they were set up to win with veteran players they have. But I think you can, like you mentioned earlier, you can look at Ohio State, not to say Michigan's the same, but, they lost all these guys. They bring in these new guys this year, and they're right back in the playoffs. So I don't think that's an impossibility for Michigan. But I think we'll have to see, how this plays out, with these younger guys taking over bigger roles, maybe not just being backups and special teams guys, but being starters. And the next 3 weeks will be key in their development, and then obviously you move forward again in the spring.
Oh, absolutely. And from your perspective, Matt, and of course we have the Orange Bowl left, so we have not written the final story on this season. From your perspective, was Jim Harbaugh's second season much better than you expected, or will you remember it more as a season what could have been?
The latter. We did predictions before the season started, and both Nick and I both had 10-2. We both had them losing at Iowa and losing at Ohio State. Iowa was not ended up being as good as we thought they would be at the end of the year, so that made that loss more disappointing than I think we would have thought going into the year. But yeah, I think they didn't have a bad year. I think for Michigan fans out there that are, I wouldn't be too disappointed because I think you're forgetting just how far this program's come in a couple of years. This program bottomed out. They were a 5-win team. They were a complete mess from top to bottom. And Jim Harbaugh comes in and takes basically the same players that were here and makes them a 10-win team and now potentially an 11-win team. So there is progress and there is a bright future. But I would say that on the whole, disappointing in just the fact that they had all this talent, they had all these veterans, and they were, it was right there for them. If they beat Iowa, that they had a 10-point lead on, I would say they're probably in the playoff. I would say it's very likely, just because your one loss would be Ohio State. But then again, I may be wrong about that. But you had everything right there for you, and just one drive each game, put the ball in the end zone, and you probably win. And that would be a much different year. You would go to the Big Ten championship game probably to the playoff, then, that would be where you'd want to be this year. So, disappointing just that they had it and weren't able to do it.
Absolutely. Oh, so close, but now it's time to move forward. So, with us here on our show this week on our Game Day segment, for the first time, is Matt Wenzel from MLive. And, of course, Matt does a great job covering Michigan with Nick Baumgartner and Brendan Quinn. Matt, we thank you for taking time to be with us. We enjoy your work and look forward to having you back on the show many times.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Quick Hits is next as we wrap it up for this week on The Michigan Man here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Quick Hits today, Jabrill Peppers is a Heisman finalist. He'll be in New York on Saturday as this year's winner is announced. He was thrilled to find out he made the final list, but is still considered a long shot. On next week's show, our scheduled guest is Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. It's been a while since we've talked recruiting, so we'll get an update from Steve, and of course, we'll talk about the Orange Bowl. In the coming weeks, we'll have our bowl preview shows, and then in early January, look back on the season that was and move forward. In the new year, we have a lot to talk about. Men and women's basketball, hockey, recruiting, spring football, and yes, even softball and baseball, which, believe it or not, will get started in February. So as I say to you each year, just because football season is over doesn't mean we go away. We'll be here with you each week covering the very busy winter athletics scene. Besides the regular weekly show, I'll throw in a Michigan Man Extra at least once a month. At least that's the plan anyway. Remember, our show app is available from the iTunes and Google Play stores. You can also get us on iHeartRadio. Just do a search for The Michigan Man and add us to your favorites. It's going to be a busy winter, so make sure you join us each week. That will do it for this week's show. Again, I'm on the road this week recording the show, so I apologize for the audio quality, but we'll be back in the home studio next week. Until then, have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until next week, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!